For me, this podcast has a simple mission, and it is to act as a bridge between our generations. We talk about life, we talk about culture, music, their successes, their failures, their regrets, and their legacies.
Well, Nigeria has always been a point of burden and a point of interest for me all along. And that came as a result of an encounter that I had, which again was a spiritual encounter.
Okay.
This is around 1983. And I held on to that divine revelation, as it were. So I was in my students' hostel on this particular day. And this is around 1983, 84, I think. It was around the time that I'd started to, give a little bit more thought to Nigeria. And I sat down by my desk on that very day, pondering over the country, Nigeria, and I had like an instruction to write down, the alphabet that forms the name Nigeria, which I did. And I was told to look at those alphabets. I looked at the alphabets, and they said the following meaning.
Can you share it with us?
Well, I think you would help me if you call the letters, then
okay.
I'll tell you exactly.
So, N,
New,
I,
industrious,
G,
generation,
E,
establishing,
R,
respectable,
I,
identity,
A.
abroad.
And that came to you from looking at those?
In 1984.
Wow.
So to put it into the right perspective, nothing like that was going on here. We didn't have a Nigerian business community. We didn't have a Nigerian professional community. It was non-existent in 1984. So what had happened at that point was that my peers who would come here to study, once they're done, they head back to Nigeria.
Sure.
Things aren't as bad as the way it is today. And so with that translation of the acronym, you would wonder that how is this going to be possible? They're not even here. Then fast forward some 30 years on. Isn't that what's going on all over the place today? And if that was not enough, I was told to look at the letters again, which I did. This time it now started with new industrious generation establishing respect in Africa.
So it broadened from
abroad. So in effect, what was being ministered to me, I wasn't a Christian in that manner. So it's for us to understand that God can talk to anybody.
100%.
And it's not about religion, it's about your humanity as a creation of God. So through you, God can speak. And what he will say could potentially really become prophetic.
Yeah, it's very true.
So what God, I believe, was ministering to me at that point in time was what was going to now transpire into the future.
Interesting.
So that's what we're seeing today.
What have been some of the obvious obstacles in seeing through an initiative or an idea like that? In trying to, I guess, bring more awareness to the respect and the industriousness in Nigeria or in Africa. I think there would have been some obvious obstacles with creating an awareness for something like that. What would you say has been the biggest or the most, what comes to mind as an obstacle?
Well, I don't have any role in this whole process. I think it's quite interesting actually. So a scripture comes to my mind.
Yes, sir.
And it says, all things work together for the good, for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Now, I'll use that scripture to explain my own outlook on all this. So come 1980, 87, around 1987. we had the first major shutdown, the universities in Nigeria. The head of state at that point, General Babangida, because there were issues with the association of us university union. It could be pay or some issues, but they shut down all the universities, and the universities were shut down for about 6, going on even a year, impacted quite seriously on those young ones.
Of course.
So the Japa syndrome that is being spoken about today happened then. There was an exodus of young Nigerians who were already in universities, headed out to the United Kingdom. And it was quite an interesting one, because this then made me understand that the process had started. I was running the nightclub. It was called the Park Discotheque on High Street, Kensington.
Oh, wow.
And normally what you would have would be the ladies free before
11.
Before 11 o'clock.
Oh, so I've heard.
That was exactly what it was. So, and it was around the autumn period. On this very day, I noticed a long queue. And I thought to myself that this is a bumper. So when you have those numbers, gentlemen all the way around. So I walked out of the club just to find out exactly what was going on. And I asked one of the young men on the queue, I said, what's going on here? Where are you guys from? I mean, we didn't have this kind of bumper response 2 weeks ago. And it was the beginning of that turnaround, even for us as a business.
Interesting.
It was the time that the universities were shut down. A lot of the students had exited. They didn't need to get a visa from the British High Commission.
Of course.
The visa could be obtained, upon entry. Now, the Prime Minister, at that point in time, Margaret Thatcher, she had introduced a policy, a ruling, when she was the Home Office Secretary, and it was a 10-year rule.
Sure.
So you needed to be in sustained education for a 10-year period, and if you can maintain that, you'll be eligible for the residence status. So for students who were possibly in the first year, second year university, they had to pull out, came in here, but they wouldn't get entry into universities in the UK.
Wow.
So they would need to start from the A levels, and that was when we experienced the proliferation of A-level colleges across the country. And that's why it's very, very important to have a structure, to have system in place. The British government have been generating significant revenue from all over the place based on their structure. If you don't have structure, forget it. It's not going to happen. You cannot sustain wealth without structure. And that is the reason why the United Kingdom continues to grow in terms of its financial or economic capability.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these young professionals, accountants, lawyers, they started setting up, A-level colleges in Oxford and Brighton, all over the place, and linked with a home office. So what that meant was that once you registered, you had, a wide selection of colleges you could attend to. There was a manual then that all you needed was just to go through the manual. We didn't have the internet or website and stuff those days. It was called Gabitas. Gabitas, they were just an organization that provided that information. So a lot of this new setups of A-level schools were registered with Gabitas, so they were listed.
Okay.
So from Nigeria, we could identify the kind of college. And you then processed, from the central bank, your fees and stuff. And once you pay, you'll get a letter. You take the letter to the Home Office, and you're then stamped as on a student's visa. And that was year in, year out, year in, year out. So for the first 5 years, which would have satisfied the A levels and continue to the university. Sure. 5 years. But you years, the extra 5 years.
Yeah.
So you find that a good number would either go on to do master's
Yeah.
degree or then move on to another course, probably professional.
Just to sustain the 10 years.
Absolutely. Reason therein that we have, a very, very high qualified, particularly, within my own generation, those are actually younger than me. I'd say my younger brother's generation in the mid 50s, they were so well read, so well positioned in the city of London, and they build for themselves a phenomenal economic base, and that is what you now see from that acronym, New Industries Generation Establishing Respectable Identity Abroad. So from that base, they've also settled down in the United Kingdom. They've started families, and those clusters have now further multiplied. The children are doing incredibly well. The very fact that they had quality education here, and they were also financially strong, they had an understanding that for their children, it wasn't even a given, it wasn't a thought that will be impressed on their mind other than to get them into private schools. So the pathway for a lot of the young ones, boarding school, quality university, and that's been the story. So you have young Nigerian professionals in their 20s, analysts in the city today. I know that because, of what we do, countless. You're in a board meeting and you have the Caucasian British, in discussion. Then you have two young, black young professionals, and they most times are Nigerians.
Yeah.
Most times are Nigerians. Fund managers, it's just incredible. And we see that even from the professional side. If you go on to NHS, it's the same thing that you see, whatever sector that you take a little view in, you will see Nigerians operating at the highest level in terms of their contribution. So Nigerians are doing incredibly well, and that's the reality, that's the fact. Of course, there are pockets of Nigerians who, just like anywhere in the world, who would display activities that present some form of negativity to the brand of the country. But by and large, the Nigerian community out here, they are a real pride. And the same thing is applicable in America. My role, as a chairman of the Nigerian Global Business Forum gives me that, insight into what we're doing globally, and it's significant, absolutely significant. Then now translating back to Nigeria, you start to see the role that Nigerians are playing across Africa. And it all also have come about as a result of the default, by virtue of the very cumbersome and troublesome issues they're facing back in Nigeria.